Okay, we'll just wait one more minute and then we will get started. So if you're just joining us, we just invite you to put in the chat where you're joining us from. And we are recording this session. So if you'd like to be off camera, you're welcome to, or you're welcome to turn your camera on so we can see your friendly faces.
All right.
Wow, so many places. Thank you all for tuning in.
Okay, well, it is 6:02, so welcome everyone, and thank you for joining NatureKids BC tonight for our first virtual Explorer Day of the season. This fall and winter, we are excited to offer 4 virtual Explorer Days focusing on ecosystems. And of course, our first ecosystems will be the oceans. My name is Caitlin Bassett, and I'm the Provincial Network Coordinator with NatureKids BC, and I'm a third-generation European settler joining in tonight from Kamloops to Secwepemc, also known as Kamloops, on the traditional and unceded territory of the Secwepemc peoples. Before we begin, I would like to emphasize how grateful we are to live, play, and carry out our work in British Columbia, which is Indigenous land. There are over 200 First Nation communities in BC, and my first question for you is, do you know which community is connected to the land that you are on this evening? And if you don't, I encourage you to take a minute to cover that. And a warm welcome to all of our member families and kids joining in tonight, and for all of our guests joining us as well. And if you'd like to learn more about being a member with NatureKids, we encourage you to visit our website at naturekidsbc.ca, or feel free to send us a friendly email over to info@naturekidsbc.ca. So if you haven't already, we'd like you to take a moment to open up the chat window and just write a little note about where you're joining us from tonight. And just a couple of housekeeping items before we start. We will be recording this session, so if you don't feel comfortable being on camera, just turn your video off. And if you have any questions during tonight's presentation, because this is a fun Q&A, a question and answer session where you can ask all of your burning questions that you may have. So we welcome you to pop it into the chat, and I'll be happy to share that with our expedition leaders tonight, or you can raise your hand and then I can invite you to unmute yourself. And if you have a support to nature here tonight, we encourage you to write this one down as one of your 6 adventures. And once you fill in all 6, you can mail it into us for a prize. And now I'm very excited to introduce tonight's special guests. We have Kara and Hans, and they are joining us live tonight from out in the Pacific Ocean. And that's right, they're actually on a ship right now in the Pacific. I just saw a video of it. It's super exciting. And it's called EV Nautilus, and it's an ocean expedition that is spending 8 months exploring the central and eastern Pacific, mapping unsurveyed seafloor and characterizing deep sea habitats. So I'm excited to welcome Kara and Hans, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Caitlin. So, like Caitlin said, my name is Kara. I'm serving as a science communication fellow here. So my job is really to serve more as an educator and storyteller about all the amazing research that's going on. We've been at sea for about 3 weeks, so we have a lot to share. And I'll let Hans also share a little bit if you'd like.
Yeah, hi, I'm Hans van Tilburg. I'm based in Honolulu, Hawaii. I work for NOAA's Office of National Marine Sanctuaries, and I actually do a lot of historical and cultural research and underwater archaeology, but I'm also assisting the geology teams and the marine biology teams on these deep ocean dives that we're conducting from this vessel, the Nautilus. So we don't actually get in the water ourselves. We use remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, robots on a long tether that go down to the bottom of the ocean and get these incredible images for us.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and share a little bit about our ship and what we've been seeing, and then we'll open it up to questions. So I'll go ahead and get us started. This is our ship, the EV Nautilus. So we're talking to you from this white box on top of the ship. We have a satellite connection, which is what that dome or spherical thing is on the back of the ship. We have almost 50 people on board, including the crew that help maintain the engines, the chef that cooks us delicious food 3 meals a day. We have teachers, scientists, remotely operated vehicle pilots and engineers. We have cultural experts. So it's a really amazing floating island. And we're all working together to make deep sea exploration possible. So I'll go ahead and also share a little bit more about where we're exploring. So Caitlin mentioned we're in the middle of the Pacific, and specifically we're in a very special place called Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument. And if you've ever been to Hawaii or heard of Hawaii, these are the main Hawaiian islands that people are often visiting.
In the
And
green.
in the green, yep. And then we've been traveling northwest towards the very corner of this protected area. It's the largest marine protected area in the U.S. And we've been looking at shipwrecks along the way, as well as the biology, so the life, and the geology, the different rocks and rock formations of some different seamounts. So if you imagine the ocean, a lot of times people think it's flat because you just see the water looking kind of flat. Maybe there's some waves, but actually in the ocean, there's lots of different geological features, and we actually go ahead and map these mountains under the ocean, and then we send our ROV down to explore them. So I'll show you an image of our ROV. So like Hans mentioned, none of us are actually going into the water. We're all just sending commands to this robot that's very, very deep in the water. This is ROV Hercules, and it can go down to 4,000 meters or about 2.5 miles. And it's connected to the ship with this tether. So this tether is basically like a fiber optic cable, and it sends electricity and commands to the robot. And it has these arms that can clip little pieces of coral or take other samples. A vacuum hose looking thing behind that arm that helps it slurp up samples. Amazing custom made camera that zooms in super close so you can see all the colors and textures of the different animals and rocks. And then we have all sorts of different tubes to collect sand and mud and water to also study those as well. And this is a huge robot. It's 900 pounds and 7 feet tall. So very, 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 very large. Oh, sorry, 5,000 pounds. We also have our smaller robot on board, but we haven't been able to use that. So if you want to learn more about our different robots on board, check out our webpage because there's all sorts of different technology aboard our ship. And then we also want to show you a little bit of what we've been seeing with this robot. So if we go ahead to our live feed, so this is happening literally right now. We're diving. We're doing a 24-hour dive on an unnamed seamount, and it looks like we're seeing some different volcanic rocks, a sponge down there. That's that white thing.
Poliopogon. My favorite sponge now.
Yeah, Hans has been learning a lot about marine sponges, and if you didn't know, those are actually animals. So sponges are not plants, they're actually animals. And we've been seeing a lot of sponges, a lot of corals. I'll show a little preview of the corals that we've been seeing. And this is from a previous dive. So this is a beautiful coral garden of deep sea corals that are yellow, purple, orange, and they're catching all these particles in the water to feed on. So a lot of times these seamounts, they have a lot of current. The water's moving really fast, and they're catching all the little things like fish poop and snail slime in the water to eat them with tiny little tentacles. And then here you can see a little sea star at the bottom, right? So these corals form a habitat, a home for different organisms, different kinds of life. Here's another huge sponge, and here are some basket stars. So if you look at this particular coral, it's got sea urchins at the bottom. It's got these basket stars, which are relatives of sea stars, but they look much more crazy. They've got way more arms, and they're really skinny and squiggly, and they grab onto that coral so they can have a place to live and feed on things in the water, or feed on, sometimes we see sea stars also feeding on the coral itself. So lots of different kinds of creatures that we see. So with that, I'll open it up to questions. We have about 20 minutes at least. So that's just a tiny little preview of what we've been looking at. Would anyone like to ask any questions about the marine life, the shipwrecks, what it's like to live at sea? We're happy to answer whatever questions you have.
Why we're rocking back and forth
Yeah.
like this in the cab.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
little wavy today.
A little
So.
lively.
I see
So
that
how far down?
I
Yeah,
see that
sorry,
Cool
go
Cat
ahead.
Jake has had their hand up for a while, so I'll just ask them to unmute, and if they'd
Okay.
like, they're welcome to unmute and ask their question. So Jake,
Yep.
I
Standing by.
kind of heard you, but maybe try again, and then if we're not able to hear you, then you're welcome to type it into the chat so we can ask your question.
Hi, does anyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yep.
Good. The marine life looks so cool under there.
Yeah, it's super cool.
I'm on the Victoria BC Vancouver Island, so I'm pretty near to those oceans probably.
Yeah, in Victoria, you're quite close.
And
You get lots of chances to go to the beach, I bet.
Yeah. Haven't gone to the beach this year, but I am planning to soon.
Do you have a question that you'd like to ask Hans and Kara?
Well, I don't have any questions. I just want to say that this is very cool and this is also very beautiful underwater.
That's awesome. Thank
thank
you
you
so
for
Yeah.
much for
sharing
sharing how much you
that.
like it.
We think it's
Well,
cool too, and you can see right behind us, that's the live dive going on right now from the bottom of the ocean in a spot that no one's ever seen before. So we think it's pretty cool too.
Okay, and next I'll go to the chat just to make this even. Martina is wondering how far down is the coral that you just showed on the screen there?
Right now, the ROV is on the bottom, working its way up to the summit of a seamount, an extinct undersea volcano. And those are the kinds of things we've been looking at. That's why you see so much lava on the bottom of the ocean. And it's about 1,600 meters beneath the surface right now.
Wow. So, oh, and it looks like we're seeing a lot of sea stars, a lot of pink sea stars on this particular, it might be a sponge. It looks like a sponge, a white sponge. So, and then those yellow things are called feather stars or crinoids, and they're also relatives of sea stars. So super cool. They like to kind of just like aggregate or um, all come together onto certain like corals and sponges.
Yep.
So yeah, great question. Thank you.
And then Albina is wondering, have you discovered any previously unknown species?
Ooh, so a word like this is active science, right? So a lot of times people think scientists, they just know everything. They're always 100% correct. That's their job to be smart. But really, we're all learning together. And so far on our dives, pretty much every dive we see something that we're a little bit like, what is that? Let's take a closer look. Let's zoom in. And we have scientists aboard that are looking at these screens, but we also have a whole team of scientists that are not on the ship. They're still on land, and they're watching our video, our live stream, and also helping to chime in and share what they think we're looking at. So we've seen a lot of different things that we're not quite sure what they are, but hopefully we've sent pictures to more experts and they can share a little bit more about what that creature is that we're seeing. But I can go ahead and share some interesting things that we have been seeing. And actually, this is a shot that Hans took with our really cool really amazing camera on our underwater robot. And this is a Venus flytrap anemone. So if you've ever seen a Venus flytrap before, it looks like a plant. It is a plant, right? And usually that plant is carnivorous, so it's closing, right, when a fly lands in it to eat that fly.
Yep.
And our Venus flytrap anemone doesn't close, but it still filters that water and gets food that way.
It's an animal.
It's
Yeah.
an
But I will
animal.
say last night there was something that came across the screen, And I'm not sure anyone yet knows what it
Yeah.
is. We weren't able to sample it because it floated by in the current, but they called it today, what was it, the flying avocado?
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
something that was green and had a hole in it, and everyone was like, "What is that? What is that?" And
yeah.
then, so yes, we are seeing things that we don't know what they are, and that's very exciting.
Yeah, and we actually are probably gonna share some of those highlights. So I think in one of our earlier dives, there was a kind of a debate: is this a sea slug or is this a sea cucumber? And people were kind of trying to figure that out. And then we saw something that could be a nudibranch type of sea slug or a pluribranch, another type of sea slug, and debating again. So check out our highlights on our social media because we do share those videos. And you can also hear the scientists talking about what they're looking at and how they're trying to ID it.
And they also get some fun common names too. There are scientific names, and then there's some common names, and I think one was called the headless flying chicken.
Chicken monster, yeah. So look that up.
Headless flying chicken monster.
Headless flying chicken monster. It's a type of sea cucumber that kind of flaps through the water, and it's very interesting looking. So
Okay, next question.
I'll definitely be looking that up after tonight. That's great. Next, I'll go to Anne and Laura. I'm just going to invite you to unmute, and you're welcome to ask your question.
How dangerous is the ocean?
Was that how dangerous
That's a
is the
good one.
ocean? Yeah.
Yes, yes. Well, we've been fortunate to have very good weather so far. So things have been safe for us. And of course, on board a ship, research vessels and government vessels, there are always drills to practice. You know, if we hear an alarm, we're taught where to go and what to do, where to muster, where to go up on deck where all the life-saving gear is, the communications gear. So we're being very safe. And so things are much, much safer now than they have been in the past to be on ships. And of course, going underwater, well, it's the robots that are going underwater and they can be fixed. So it's not ourselves that are diving down to these deep depths in the ocean. We're comfortable on board the ship looking at these fantastic images from undersea.
Yeah.
But you're right, sometimes the ocean can be very rough and it can be a place that you have to be very careful because there are storms and large waves. And when people do go deep under the water, there's great pressure. The deeper you go, there's tremendous pressure, the water pressure. So all these things make us be very cautious and make sure that safety on board the ship for us is of #1 importance.
Yeah, and we have all sorts of safety gear like life rafts, life vests. So there's a lot of preparation before we even get out here. We're planning ahead like a year in advance
Oh
to
yeah,
make sure that we've got everything prepared. And we have a medical officer on board too, because we're pretty far from any kind of hospital. So we have someone on board who can help with medical emergencies as well.
right. We're about 1,000 miles, I would guess, from my home in Honolulu.
Yeah, really great question.
Great. And we'll hear from Oscar next. So Oscar, I'll be asking you to unmute.
Hi, Oscar.
I have a question. So, like, how far did like how big is the ship? How big is
Ooh, how
the ship?
big? Yeah, how big is the ship? So I'll go ahead and show that video of the ship again. Our ship is about 224 feet long. So from tip to the end, that's 224 feet. And it's kind of like you could walk up and down the ship pretty quickly if you wanted to. So it's not the largest ship. Have you worked on larger ships, Hans, or smaller ships as well?
Oh, sure. We have a lot of small craft in NOAA. We have dive boats. We have ships that are a little larger. This is a good size vessel. We call it a ship, not a boat, because ships launch smaller boats. Boats don't launch smaller ships, right? But the ship has everything we need. We have staterooms where we have bunks that we share the staterooms. We have a galley where we eat our meals. We have a lounge area where we can talk with each other off duty. There's a wet lab where all the samples are processed when we collect rocks or marine biology samples. There are mapping rooms and computer rooms and a work deck for the engineers to fix the remotely operated vehicles, the ROVs. So it's a good sized ship. And we're pretty happy with it.
Yeah, great question.
So Prudence in the chat has a question, and they're wondering, have you ever seen a Dumbo octopus?
Ooh,
Yes,
everyone loves Dumbo octopus, right?
absolutely.
And we were so lucky. Actually, we saw one today too. But we've been so lucky to see a few of them on our dives. And I'll go ahead and show a video of one that we saw recently. And here you can just see it gracefully swimming through the water. This was such a special moment for us as we watched it kind of come through our camera. And we've also seen them close to the bottom. We have seen a Dumbo octopus actually getting eaten by crabs. So that Dumbo octopus passed away and then was getting scavenged on by crabs as well. So that's definitely been one of my favorite things to spot on our expeditions so far. So great question. Do we have some more?
Yeah, next question is from Marie, and they're wondering, what do you eat and how long are you usually on the ship for?
Yeah, would you like to answer that, Han?
Yeah. Food is a great one to keep the morale of the crew, motivated and up. So we have, 2 chefs on board and a steward, and the ship stores have a wonderful supply of hamburgers and French fries and stir fries and rices and tortillas and quesadillas, and we get a great variety. And we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner on board the ship. So it's not a problem of not having enough food. The problem is not eating too much between our watches. But talking about how long we're on board for the full 28 days. We departed port on September 1st and we'll return to Honolulu on September 28th. And we work 24 hours shifts. So we have different watches. We're all on watch in the van behind me for 4 hours at a time, and then we have 8 hours off. And the next team steps in, the next watch comes in. The robot doesn't need to sleep. The ROV on the seafloor doing the survey is doing a 24-hour dive. We need to sleep and eat. So we have different watches that step in at different times and change places. Good question.
So next we'll go to Jeff. I'll ask for you to unmute.
I have a question. What's the most rarest animal you've found? Have you ever found a Yeti crab? And have you ever lost the robot?
Oh, very good question. So we see kind of rare animals, I would say pretty frequently. Sometimes we only see them once, or maybe, only 3 times. So we do have certain animals that we don't see them that often. I'll show an example of one of the things that our scientists in our watch is interested in, and this is what is called a sea pen. So it's kind of like a relative of a coral, and we can zoom in and you can see all the different kind of like tentacle looking structures that help it grab stuff in the water. And this sea pen was a pretty amazing moment when the scientists spotted it, because they never knew that it could be found in this part of the ocean. So they have found it in other parts of the oceans before, but this was the first record that they saw on this particular area of the world. So that was a really special sighting. And we have been able to see some sea pens on our dives as well, a different kind. And we kind of count them as well to get a better idea of how abundant are they, how many of them are there, and that way we can know which species are there a lot of, which species are there not a lot of, which ones do we need to protect and study more. So very good question.
Yeah, well, we certainly have not lost the ROV on this mission, and that would be not a good situation. It has happened in the past that missions like this have, lost connection with an ROV and then recovered them. But the operators that we have are very cautious when the ROV is near the seafloor to be aware of any potential entanglements, any types of, if there is rope or net, or if they get too close to certain rocks, they're very cautious not to touch the bottom or to get into a situation where the ROV might become entangled. That's an important consideration.
Yeah.
So next we'll go to Rochelle. Rochelle, I'll ask you to unmute.
Hi, my name's B. It's not Rochelle.
That's my mom's name.
That's my mom's name. But my question
Okay.
is, have you seen a shark? And also, what's the rarest type of octopus you've seen? And I love the ocean.
Oh, thank you.
That's
We love
nice.
the ocean too. We're so glad you can experience this with us. And I love your question. So, have we seen a shark? We have seen some sharks. Most of them so far have been pretty small, called lantern sharks or cat sharks, for the deep ocean at least. And then sometimes we look over the side of the ship and we can actually see oceanic white-tip sharks. So these again are not deep sea sharks, but they are a type of shark, and they are what we call more pelagic sharks, meaning they're often in the open ocean. They're not really close to shore. So what's happening here is the ROV is coming up after a dive, and the camera is still on, and we can see these oceanic white-tip sharks swimming along with these fish. And then there are deep sea sharks that can get kind of large as well. Aside from those lantern and cat sharks that I talked about, here is a 6-gill shark. So most sharks, if you look at the side for here with the gill slits, they have 5, but for this particular shark, it has 6 gills. So pretty cool. And then Hans, do you want to help answer the other question? After the shark question, it was it about an octopus? Sorry, sorry, got too excited about sharks, then I forgot your other
Can you
question.
remind us?
Yeah.
Was there a second part to that question? I forget.
It was about what types of octopuses have you seen, and also if you've like seen any like I forget what they're called, but they're like kind of like they're like
Sea angel? The sea
yeah,
angel?
the sea angels, sea angels.
Ooh, okay. So,
Well,
octopus we've seen.
yeah,
Yeah.
the Dumbo octopus we've seen. I
Yeah.
don't think we've seen others. We've seen squid and shrimp, and I think that's the one octopus we've seen in the deep ocean. Of
Yeah.
course, in the shallows, we see a lot more.
Yeah, and I showed you the video of that Dumbo octopus already, but here's another video of a octopus relative. This particular one is called a vampire squid, and it's just a really amazing creature with this dark red color. And even though it's called a vampire squid, it doesn't actually suck blood or anything. It's, again, catching little particles in the water to feed on them. So pretty amazing. And then we have not seen any sea angels, unfortunately. They might not be in this area. I'm not really sure, actually. So I don't want to tell you the wrong thing, but we haven't seen any so far. And maybe we'll send the EV Nautilus to an area where they do have them someday. So thanks for that question. And I think we're almost at the half hour, so I'm happy to stay and answer more questions. Hans, if you would like to return to the watch, you're welcome to offer them your expertise. And also whatever works for your schedules for Nature Kids, just let us know what you would like us to do.
Thanks, Kara. Yeah, we can go for
Yep.
5 more minutes. I'll go to the chat next and take some questions here. So Kai is wondering, are there any underwater volcanoes that you've come across?
Yes, we are diving a whole series of extinct underwater volcanoes, seamounts that were formed by a hotspot in the Earth's crust. So if you know about how the Earth's crust works and how plates of it kind of shift around and move, if there's one hotspot in the magma underneath the plate, it pops up a volcano underwater. Then the plate moves, but the hotspot doesn't, and it pops up another underwater volcano. That's how the Hawaiian Islands were formed. And those are some of the things we're looking at underwater. These extinct underwater volcanoes, all made of lava. But where I live in the state of Hawaii, off of the Big Island, there is a live underwater volcano called Loihi. And Loihi right now is creating a new island next to the Big Island. Don't hold your breath. It'll be a few thousand years before it makes it to the surface, but we are diving all these volcanoes up here that are deep underwater. Some of them may have never even come up above the water. They just had underwater eruptions. There are many of them, and those are exactly the kinds of things we're looking at. And that's what makes our geologists so happy to be here, is to look at those kinds of rocks.
Great. And then
Good
another question. Mary, Sarah, and Maddie are wondering if the robots ever break.
Yeah, so I've heard from our ROV engineers that they do a lot of maintenance. So once the ROV comes up, you know, they have to rinse it off. They have to check the oil inside. So a lot of times there's oil inside certain parts of the ROV, so that um, if there was a crack or something, this oil is like kind of pressurized and the oil would come out instead of seawater getting in. And then there's all these different parts, right, that need to be maintained. The camera, different sensors. Here in this animation, you can see all the different parts, and we actually have a 3D printer on board. So that can actually print out little bits of custom-made parts that we can replace any broken bits with. So when I first came aboard, they were actually printing something to add to this ROV. So it is something that does break sometimes, but our engineers are able to, you know, fix it and prevent those breakages, hopefully. Yeah, great question.
Great. And I'll now ask Emma to unmute.
Hi, my name's Shay. And I want to know, what's your favorite thing to study?
Ooh, we want to take that on?
Well, you know, I do shipwreck archaeology. So my favorite things to study are the sunken shipwrecks and the kind of history that we can learn from them and what they can tell us about past events. And on this mission, we looked at some of the deep sites for those shipwrecks resting in the dark, dark ocean waters, very deep, over 3 miles down. So there's a lot of history there, and there's a lot of things that we can remember when we look at them about past events. So I like that. Although right now our mission is now moved on to the seamounts and undersea volcanoes, and we're doing geology and biology. But that's my own specialty. That's what I was brought up studying and doing.
Yeah, great question. And for me, I study biology, so mostly the different creatures. And when I'm not on the Nautilus, I'm actually based in Guam, which is like a small island kind of near the Philippines or Japan. And I work on the seagrass and mangroves there, so plants and the water, basically. And what I love is not only understanding the creatures, but also understanding how we as people can help protect them and make sure that all future generations can continue enjoying all the wonderful things about the ocean, and make sure we can still survive and, you know, get fish and breathe the oxygen that ocean plants help provide. Make sure that our town stays safe from waves because our coral reefs and mangroves are healthy. So there's the animals that I love, but also the people and communities that I love as well, and making sure those two things can work together. Right. Any
Great.
last
So we've got
questions or
time
comments?
for one more question. I'll ask Aloan to unmute. I know you've been waiting very patiently, so thank you.
What's the craziest thing that you guys have seen?
Oh, it's just so hard to answer because there's so many amazing things that we see. And definitely check out our website, because there's thousands of photos and videos. But is there anything you want to share?
Oh, no, I can answer. Definitely. So I don't know, for some reason, there are these brittle stars underwater that are like, you know, very thin sea stars, but they climb up on things. They climb up on corals, they climb up on rocks. And remember, this is deep ocean. This is deep in the ocean, a mile, 2 miles down in darkness. We're bringing in, these creatures haven't seen light ever. This is the first time they've ever had their homes lit up. But these brittle stars will climb up on top of things, and we see them do this all the time. They get to the top of a bamboo coral or a rock, and then they jump off. And they just parachute down and roll down the slope a little bit on the rocks, and they climb up and they do it again. And I keep thinking it's got to be just for fun. It's got to be just recreational jumping. It's the most hilarious thing I've seen on this expedition.
The sea stars definitely have a lot of character, especially because they kind of look like they have arms, legs, and a head, right? So sometimes they look like they're slumped over and napping, or they're sitting on a coral like really full after a good meal. So a lot of fun sea star
Oh, the sea
sighting.
stars. Yeah, yeah, that's amazing too.
Yeah, and I'll show one more crazy creature because you were asking about some of the most amazing,
Crazy creatures.
unusual
Oh, this is
things
a
that we
crazy
see.
creature.
Yeah, this is a crazy creature we saw here in Papahanaumokuakea on a previous expedition, and kind of looks like a huge tadpole. But if you look closely at that front area, there you can see like little eyes and a face. And our ROV is creating a little bit of a current as it goes around, so that's why it's getting blown around a little bit. But I'll fast forward a bit and keep your eyes open because you'll see it open its mouth really huge in just a second. There it goes. So, whoa, it's like opening its mouth so huge, and it fits its name, the gulper eel. So you can see that crazy transformation in that deep sea fish. Again, food in the deep sea is not very common. So if you see it, you really want to, gulp all of it down and get that food when you can. So thank you so much for letting us share about our different animals, our different adventures out at sea. Would you like any closing comments?
Yeah, thank you so much to both of you. This was wonderful. And I'm sorry if we didn't have a chance to reach out with your question. I will be sending out some really cool ocean resources. So if you have a question, feel free to send my way. And we'll see if we can get that answered for you. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining us tonight. We really enjoyed seeing into your expedition and down into the deep ocean. And thank you for all the wonderful conservation work that you're doing. And for everyone that joined tonight, if you haven't already, be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And you can also visit our website at naturekidsbc.ca. And if you're not already a member, we welcome you to join us. We welcome everyone, and we've got more of these wonderful virtual Explorer Days coming up. The next one will be in November, so stay tuned for all the details. And thanks, everyone.
And
thanks
just
again, Hans and
small
Sarah, for
detail.
joining us tonight.
Yeah, small detail. We also have a coloring book. If any of you want a free coloring book to print out about the deep sea and our ROVs and all the different aspects of ocean exploration, if you want to check out our website. And you can tune into our live stream and ask questions in our comment box there if there's something we couldn't get to tonight. So thank you all so much for your time. Have fun exploring and enjoying nature.
Thanks, Nature Kids.
Have a wonderful night, everyone. See you later.